Firstly, on the matter of Russia and Ukraine, there is no one in South Africa who supports war. We've made that very clear. And we have said that we wish to see intensified efforts at increased diplomacy, utilizing the good offices of the United Nations, particularly the Secretary General, and other leaders who may be of weight in terms of persuading the interlocutors to come around the table and negotiate a settlement of this awful conflict. This is the position of South Africa. We support a search for peace. We are appalled by war. We abhor war because it brings untold suffering, which is something we experienced under apartheid. So this is the position that we have. With respect to the role that multilateral bodies such as the United Nations should play, we believe that all principles that are germane to the United Nations Charter and international humanitarian law must be upheld for all countries, not just some. Just as much as the people of Ukraine deserve their territory and freedom, the people of Palestine deserve their territory and freedom. And we should be equally concerned at what is happening to the people of Palestine as we are with what is happening to the people of Ukraine. We've not seen an even-handed approach in utilization of the prescripts of international law. And we encourage that the world should have greater attention to ensuring that we are equal to everybody. This has been a concern, and this is what at times leads to cynicism about international bodies and a lack of belief in their ability to protect the weakest and most marginalized. We have to change that belief and cynicism and ensure that all international institutions treat all human beings in a fashion that shows them whether we are ICC, ICJ, UN Security Council, G20, EU, whoever we are, we will protect. This is important. Also on Taiwan, clearly as South Africa, we have very clear separation between the executive and the legislature. Recently, the Speaker of the National Assembly was invited to be part of a group of the Interparliamentary Union, a group of speakers who were a delegation that were to visit Ukraine. I could not say to the Speaker, Speaker, don't go there, don't go there. It is Parliament's decision as to what they do. This is what separation of power means. So I think for us, decisions by presiding officers, whether we agree with them or not, as the executive, they would have to live with our decisions. We have to live with their decisions and repair any breaches in relations that they may cause. That's our duty to do that. Of course, we welcome the ceasefire in Palestine. However, we do express concern that many civilians have been killed. Infrastructure that provides services to ordinary civilians has been destroyed. The people of Palestine are living in buildings that are shells. And this worries us, having experienced apartheid ourselves and living in corridors. So we do think there's work for the world to do in ensuring that we create peace in the territory of Palestine and have a two-state solution where you have two nations existing in peace, side by side. We also think we're not satisfied that there's been an independent investigation of the murder of Shireen Abu Akleh, and we still call for a full independent investigation and a full report on who actually shot her. Because you can't say bullets shot a person. It's an individual who wields the gun, and we need to get to the truth of that. This is what would show that we are truly committed to being honest and even-handed toward all people, and in particular toward media practitioners who must be given the security to practice their craft. On the elections in Kenya, we've been very pleased that thus far the campaign up to its end yesterday seemed to have been largely peaceful. We hope that the election which occurs on our Women's Day in South Africa, that it will result in a stable, free and fair election. We wish the people of Kenya well in this process. We recall the last election, and we are hoping that tomorrow everyone will be able to exercise their democratic right to vote in a condition of peace and security. I'm glad that Secretary Blinken has confirmed that America is not asking us to choose. I don't recall any attempt by the United States to do that. But in terms of our interaction with some of our partners in Europe and elsewhere, there has been a sense of a patronizing bullying toward you choose this or else. And the recent legislation passed in the United States of America by the House of Representatives, we found a most unfortunate bill that we'd hoped the media would say more about, because when we believe in freedom, as I'm saying, it's freedom for everybody. You can't say because Africa is doing this, you will then be punished by the United States. So that's been a disappointing passage of legislation by one house, and we hope the other house will not agree to such offensive legislation. So indeed, it is important that all of us accept our ability to hold different opinions. We are, after all, sovereign nations that are regarded as equal in terms of the United Nations Charter. We may differ in terms of economic power and economic ability to influence development in different parts of the world, but what will make the world work is if we respect each other. This is very, very important. And one thing I definitely dislike is being told either you choose this or else. When a minister speaks to me like that, which Secretary Blinken has never done, but some have, I definitely will not be bullied in that way, nor would I expect any other African country worth its salt to agree to be treated. Russia, I've tried so many times to explain to so many people. Russia is a very negligible economic partner for South Africa. Our trade with Russia is less than $4 billion annually, compared to the $20 billion that I referred to earlier with respect to the United States. So this fear that we exist under some push is, I think, a totally, really unfounded belief in the relationship that we have with either country. And we've been quite clear in saying we really advocate for peace because we knew what would happen. We knew there'd be destruction, there'd be death, there'd be desolation. And that's what we're all seeing. And what we've always asked is, where is this going to end? Let us make every effort to get peace. Thank you very much for the question. I think that when you approach a strategy, you need to think very carefully about the kinds of tactics that you would utilize. So the overall strategic intention might be to advocate for democracy and support its presence on the African continent. However, if your tactic is to approach African countries and say that, listen, you must be democratic, and use our model, it works. I think it's bound to lead to some failure. I do agree with Tony that all countries and peoples deserve the right to exercise their civil and political rights. But I think, given history, the approach has to be somewhat different. And I would recommend a greater attention to tools that Africans have developed, such as the African peer review mechanism, as a way into broader discussions about governance and democracy, rather than we will. You know, there are 44 African countries that have now agreed to be transparent and evaluated under the African peer review mechanism principles of democracy and good governance. An extremely important tool. We've already had over 40 such evaluations. Let's discuss the outcomes of those reviews with each of the African countries and look at areas where it was found there are gaps that must be addressed, and look at how we work together. And in that way, you build a platform toward the objective you eventually seek to achieve. But to come in and seek to teach a country that, you know, we know how democracy functions, and we've come to tell you, you do it, you know, it will work for you. I think it leads to defeat. So we need to think in different ways. I also think that one of the lessons we also need to learn and perhaps draw lessons from, one of the experiences we should draw lessons from, is the reality that there has been a lot of external interference in Africa. And a lot of that external interference has fueled conflict in many African countries, has fueled instability, has supported opposition groups against liberation fighters, and so on. You know the history, perhaps better than myself. This is a reality. So in my view, while there may be concern about Wagner Group or Van Dijk, which is another security group which was in Mozambique, there's also a concern about countries that have mineral interests in African countries and are there as a destabilizing force. So I think we need to look at the full plethora of problems that give rise to insecurity, bad governance, and the absence of democracy on the African continent. It's not a one-country problem. It's a world phenomenon which results from Africa's rich mineral wealth that has made it a significant target of external players that don't always have the interests of Africa at heart.